The vote was unanimous. That was the part humanity would never forgive. In the galactic assembly chamber, an impossible cathedral of floating stone rings and living light, the decision finalized with a sound like soft bells. Harmonized chimes echoed across vacuum and thought space alike, signaling consensus. No dissent. No abstentions. No moral objections worth recording. Across 1,000 species, ancient and new, the same conclusion had been reached. Humans were dangerous. Humans were adaptable. Humans were best controlled. The resolution scrolled across hollow screens in languages that had predated stars. Planetary designation, Sol 3, local name, Earth. Status change, sovereign to asset. Action, civilizational enslavement. Population, to be pacified, tagged, and distributed among member states according to labor aptitude. Several delegates applauded politely. Others relaxed, satisfied. A few predators smiled in ways that didn't translate well to human facial expressions. Chair being Ulcath of the assembly, a creature more ideology than flesh, allowed itself a ripple of smug satisfaction. History, it announced, will remember this as a bloodless victory. Laughter followed. Dry. Confident. The humans had been a problem for decades. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were inconvenient. They didn't respect borders. They didn't follow precedent. They kept surviving things that should have erased them. Worse, they multiplied. Yes, humans fought among themselves constantly. But every time an outside force tried to step in, those internal wars paused. Old grudges froze. Guns turned outward. That was unacceptable. So the assembly had done what it always did to unruly species. It studied them, categorized them, reduced them to predictable data. Humans loved hierarchy. Humans followed orders. Humans obeyed uniforms and flags. Therefore, humans would make excellent soldiers. Excellent miners. Excellent property. The enslavement vote passed in less than 4 minutes. A transmission was prepared, formal, cold, and very clear. It informed Earth that resistance would result in orbital sterilization, while compliance would ensure the survival of their culture in a productive capacity. The message was sent. The assembly waited for panic. They waited for rage. They waited for the emotional outbursts that lesser species always produced when the universe informed them they were no longer in charge of their own fate. What they got instead was nothing. No reply. Earth went quiet. Human networks stopped broadcasting beyond Sol. Their diplomats vanished from embassies without warning. Their merchant ships reversed course mid-jump and disappeared into classified routes. Sensors still showed Earth. Cities still glowed. Radio chatter still bounced around their planet. But outwardly? Silence. 72 standard hours passed. Some delegates grew uneasy. Others mocked them for it. Predators always snarl before they die, sneered Ambassador Krith of the Vel Dominion. Humans are no different. The assembly moved on to logistics. Labor quotas. Auction schedules. Which species would receive human shock troops, and which would get agricultural workers. There was a brief debate over whether humans should be allowed to keep their music. The answer was no. On the third day, as a minor trade dispute was being debated, every screen in the chamber flickered. Then went black. Then turned white. A single human symbol appeared, a simple blue circle, cracked down the middle. No translation tag. No warning. Just video. Old footage. Grainy. Shaking. Black and white. Alien delegates leaned forward as scenes played out, humans charging through mud under machine gun fire. Cities reduced to skeletons of concrete and smoke. A mushroom cloud blooming silently over a city by the sea. Millions died in minutes. The footage jumped forward, different wars, different centuries. Humans fighting humans. Tanks rolling over shattered streets. Starving civilians. Burning flags. The assembly stirred uncomfortably. This is irrelevant, Ulcath snapped. Historical barbarism proves. The human voice cut in. Old. Gravelly. Calm. So this is where you made the decision. The footage paused on an image of human soldiers, young, exhausted, filthy, smoking and laughing in a trench. You studied us, the voice continued. Ran simulations. Built models. You think you understand us because you counted our wars. The image changed. Modern now. Human warships under construction. Massive, ugly things. No curves. No elegance. Just armor and engines. You saw that we fight each other a lot, the voice said. What you missed is why. The footage accelerated. Humans rebuilding cities. Shaking hands over ruins. Turning weapons into plows, then back into weapons when threatened again. We don't fight because we love war, the voice said. We fight because we argue about who gets to decide things. The assembly chamber was silent now. The video shifted again. This time, simulations, clearly classified military projections. Human fleets engaging alien analogs. Not clean formations. Not disciplined lines. Chaos. Human ships plunged directly into enemy formations, detonating themselves to open gaps. Boarding craft slammed into hulls at suicidal speeds. Marines poured out into vacuum, maglocking to alien ships and cutting their way inside. A Keth delegate recoiled as it recognized its own fleet doctrine being torn apart frame by frame. The voice grew colder. And you voted. All of you. To take that choice away from us. The human symbol returned. Cracked. Still blue. You think slavery is about chains, the voice said. It's not. It's about telling someone their decisions no longer matter. The feed cut. For a heartbeat, the galaxy held its breath. Then the Sol system vanished. Not exploded. Not hidden behind shields. Gone. Every chart. Every beacon. Every quantum reference point that had anchored Sol's position returned null. As if someone had reached into the map of reality and erased it. Panic erupted. Delegates shouted. Analysts screamed. Military liaisons demanded confirmation. Fleets were scrambled. Probes were launched toward the last known coordinates of Earth. They found nothing. No gravity well. No stellar radiation. Just empty space. Cherbing Olcath felt something it had not experienced since its species first crawled out of a dying sun. Doubt. Somewhere, deep in the Assembly's archived human data, a warning surfaced, long ignored. A single translated sentence from an ancient Earth general. Never corner a species that fights its own gods. And for the first time since the vote, the Galactic Assembly began to understand. They hadn't enslaved humanity. They had given it permission. Permission to stop arguing with itself. Permission to aim outward. Permission to do what humans did best when the rules no longer applied. Prepare for war. The first ships died quietly. That should have been the warning. A Keth Dominion patrol, 6 Corvette-class vessels armed with phase lances and confidence, translated into the empty coordinates where Sol used to be. Their sensors screamed immediately. Gravity behaved wrong. Space bent like heat haze. Then the patrol commander did what every alien commander did when something didn't make sense. He advanced. The ships vanished one by one. No explosions. No energy spikes. Just absence, like a bad memory being edited out of existence. The Dominion flagged it as a navigation anomaly. That mistake cost them a fleet. Admiral Ruhl, Supreme Talon of the Keth, dismissed the reports with a clatter of mandibles and an irritated hiss. He had fought 8 wars and lost none. Humans, to him, were hairless primates with a talent for noise and self-destruction. Send a battle group, he ordered. Humans respect strength. The battle group arrived at the anomaly 12 hours later. 2 cruisers returned. They drifted home on cold engines, hulls peeled open like butchered meat. Entire sections had been cut out with surgical precision, leaving clean, deliberate scars. No plasma scoring. No energy residue. Manual work. Inside, Keth crews were found frozen in vacuum, maglocked to decks, weapons unused. Walls were marked with human symbols, cards, dice, crude drawings of animals wearing hats. One phrase was repeated everywhere, etched deep into alloy. You should have read our history more closely. The survivors were worse. Admiral Roll interrogated one personally. The officer shook uncontrollably, antennae snapped short, eyes unfocused. They didn't fight like a navy, the officer whispered. They didn't try to win the engagement. They tried to hurt us. Roll laughed. Then the lights went out. Across Keth space, human ships began to appear, not at borders, not at jump points, but inside defended systems. They arrived so close to planets that tidal forces shredded unprepared vessels. Their engines burned hot and ugly, screaming defiance into physics itself. Human fleets didn't maneuver. They charged. One cruiser rammed a Keth flagship at full burn, detonating its own reactor to collapse the enemy's shields. Boarding pods followed the explosion, riding the debris cloud like shrapnel. Marines poured out in patched armor, shouting, laughing, swearing. Alien command channels were flooded, not with threats, but with jokes. Knock knock! A human voice drawled as breaching charges went off. Open up! We brought freedom. The Keth Dominion's war doctrine collapsed in hours. Their formations, built for clean, elegant combat, were useless against enemies who didn't care if they survived the fight, as long as the mission did. Humans called it the dead man doctrine. If you're close enough to die, you're close enough to kill. Assembly analysts watched in horror as battle after battle ended the same way. Human losses were staggering and irrelevant. Every destroyed human ship took 3 with it. Every boarding action turned into a massacre inside alien corridors never designed for close combat. Then came the broadcasts. Human soldiers sat on crates amid burning command centers, helmets off, blood on their armor. One leaned into the camera, chewing something. "Hey Galactic Assembly," he said casually. "About that slavery vote, y'all still feel good about it?" The message looped. Confidence across the assembly fractured. But the true terror came next. The humans didn't just attack assembly species. They liberated them. Slave worlds, entire civilizations crushed under assembly law, found their orbital chains shattered overnight. Human transports descended, not with orders, but with weapons, medical supplies, and translators. A human colonel addressed millions of freed beings from the steps of a former assembly governor's palace. "They taught you obedience," she said. "We're going to teach you something better." She tossed a rifle to a former slave. Choice. Across the galaxy, the oppressed rose. Assembly garrisons were overwhelmed from within. Species long considered docile fought with a ferocity born of centuries of humiliation. Human officers didn't command them. They stood beside them. Shared rations. Shared jokes. Shared scars. "You made the galaxy a plantation," a human general broadcast across open channels. "Congratulations. We're starting a union." Dark humor spread faster than panic. Alien propaganda dissolved under waves of human sarcasm and recorded battlefield banter. Even neutral powers quietly shut down assembly offices and rerouted trade away from doomed worlds. Then the assembly tried diplomacy. Envoys were sent, unarmed, desperate, carrying offers of partial autonomy, delayed enslavement, regret. Humans answered with coffins. Each envoy ship returned intact. Inside were the bodies of its crew, carefully arranged. No mutilation. No cruelty. Just a single human message printed on paper, a relic technology, chosen deliberately. This conversation ended when you voted. The war escalated. Assembly fleets mobilized in numbers unseen in recorded history. Ancient weapons were unsealed. Stars were stripped for fuel. The galaxy trembled under the weight of total war. And still, the humans advanced. They didn't conquer territory. They dismantled it. Financial hubs vanished. Political capitals burned. Data vaults were erased with surgical precision. Entire species woke up one cycle to find their government, currency, and command structure gone. No replacements offered. Just absence. In the ruins of a shattered assembly world, an old human marine lit a cigarette beneath an alien sky and looked at the burning horizon. "Told you," he muttered to no one in particular. "Politics always end in blood." Back in the assembly chamber, panic finally replaced arrogance. Emergency votes were called. Repeals. Apologies. Promises. Too late. Because somewhere in the dark between stars, humanity was no longer asking if it should stop. It was deciding how much the galaxy needed to bleed to remember the lesson. Panic is a strange thing when it grips beings who believe themselves eternal. The Galactic Assembly had survived supernovas, machine uprisings, and gods that demanded tribute in suns. It had never survived fear. Now it festered in every chamber, every encrypted channel, every sleepless mind that replayed human footage on loop. Emergency sessions blurred together. Votes contradicted votes. Species that had shouted yes the loudest now demanded amnesty, claiming misunderstanding, faulty translations, procedural coercion. Humans answered none of it. They were busy. Assembly fleets gathered in numbers meant to terrify. Entire sectors bristled with warships. Ancient relic weapons, devices so old their creators were dust, were powered up. The logic was simple, brutal, and familiar. If the head could not be reasoned with, it would be crushed. And if Earth was the head, then Earth would die. The black vault was opened. Even speaking of it had once been punishable by erasure. Inside slept a weapon older than the assembly itself, a Star Eater, a gravity-engineered abomination designed to collapse stellar cores into obedient singularities. It had ended rebellions before humans had learned to shape stone. The assembly justified it easily. This is mercy. End the source, end the suffering. Coordinates were fed into the weapon. Soul. Or rather, where soul had been. The Star Eater fired. Space screamed. Reality twisted as the weapon tore open gravity like flesh, reaching for a star that wasn't there. And then, something grabbed back. The void rippled. Sensors went mad. The soul system returned. Not gently. Not gradually. It snapped back into existence like a blade leaving its sheath, dragging folded space with it, an impossible lattice of compressed dimensions, glowing with human mathematics the galaxy had dismissed for centuries as inefficient and dangerously inelegant. The black vault weapon misaligned. Its gravitational lance skewed. Straight into the assembly's capital star. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the heart of assembly space began to die. The star swelled, light twisting into violent colors no eye was meant to see. Planets tore themselves apart under tidal forces. Stations evaporated. The assembly chamber, seat of galactic power for 10 million years, fractured as its sun went nova in slow, horrifying silence. Across the galaxy, trillions watched their center of civilization become a blooming wound of light. A human transmission cut through the chaos. Clear. Calm. Yum. You don't get to end us, the voice said. That privilege is reserved for ourselves. Human fleets poured out of folded space, hundreds, then thousands, ships painted not with serial numbers, but names. Gettysburg. Blackbeard. No second chance. Union Jackknife. They didn't slow. They didn't form ranks. They descended. The final war ignited everywhere at once. Assembly command structures collapsed with their star, but ancient defense protocols kicked in automatically. Autonomous fleets fought on without orders, relic AIs unleashing firestorms across entire systems. Human response was brutal and intimate. They boarded. They sabotaged. They killed command intelligences by hand. On one shattered world, human infantry fought street to street alongside former slaves, species that had never been allowed to carry weapons now firing back with screams of rage and laughter that sounded disturbingly human. A human sergeant dragged a wounded alien behind cover, slapped a stim into its neck, and yelled, "You die after the war, got it?" The alien laughed through blood and nodded. Not all humans agreed with how far it went. Some commanders hesitated. Some diplomats begged for restraint. On one liberated assembly world, A human ambassador executed a surrendering senator live on broadcast. "Mercy," she said coldly, lowering the pistol, "is for those who asked before the chains came out." The clip spread like wildfire. So did the debate. Human cities burned too. Retaliatory strikes hit Earth's outer colonies. Civilian transports were lost. Families died. The cost was no longer abstract. A human captain stared at a casualty list and whispered, "We're becoming what they said we were." An older officer answered without looking up, "No. We're becoming what they made us prove we could be." The final assembly holdouts fell within weeks. Their war fleets lay shattered. Their client species had turned on them. Their myths of inevitability were dust. At the edge of the former capital system, a human dreadnought drifted amid wreckage and stellar fire. A message was broadcast to every receiver still alive. "This is the end of the Galactic Assembly," the voice said. "Not because we conquered it." A pause. "But because it deserved to end." The galaxy understood then. This was not a war for territory. It was a sentence being carried out. And humanity was not finished reading the verdict. The war ended the way humans always ended wars, messy, incomplete, and unforgettable. The Galactic Assembly no longer existed. Its once pristine chambers, vast and impossible, were now hollowed-out museums of their own hubris. Statues of long-dead bureaucrats lay in ruin. Data vaults were empty, libraries burned, and fleets reduced to floating skeletons. Across trillions of light-years, species whispered the same trembling truth: the galaxy was unrecognizable, and it was humanity's doing. Yet humans did not sit on thrones. They did not declare dominion over the stars. They dismantled tyranny and walked away from the power they could have claimed. Some stayed among the wreckage, helping former slaves rebuild, teaching them tools, tactics, and laughter again. A human officer from Earth poured whiskey into alien skull-shaped cups and told a story about a starship battle that had no survivors except wit and stubbornness. Across smoking cities and cratered moons, love began to bloom where it had never been allowed. Alien and human, former enemies, bound by survival. A twisted rom-com of first contact unfolded in the debris of the old empire, with marriage licenses and languages no one had spoken in 1,000 years. Others returned home. Earth bore the scars of interstellar vengeance. Rings replaced shattered moons, and memorials towered higher than skyscrapers. Veterans sat on porches under strange skies, telling grandchildren of alien species, political betrayal, and battles so vast they'd barely fit in words. And then the delegation arrived. Unarmed. Trembling. Humble. The few remaining species who had once voted for humanity's enslavement knelt on the soil of Sol 3. Their leader, a pale, insect thing with mandibles quivering, spoke in halting galactic basic. "Please," it said. "We beg, what will it take for forgiveness?" A human president, a former tank commander with gray hair and eyes sharp enough to cut through steel, regarded them silently. He took his time. There was no rush. Every second stretched into eternity, a reminder of the lives lost and the chains they had attempted to impose. Finally he spoke. "Nothing." Hope flickered in the delegation's compound eyes. "Forgiveness isn't the point," he continued, leaning forward, voice calm, deliberate. "Remembering is. Remembering what you tried to do. Remembering what you lost. Remembering that every vote has consequences." Then he rose fully, shadows falling across a battlefield of history and memory. "You voted to enslave us. We taught you what humans do to slavers. Now go. Live with it." They fled. Across the galaxy, whispers spread like wildfire, half prayer, half warning. If humanity is quiet, be afraid. If humanity jokes, run. And if humanity goes silent after you threaten their freedom, God help you. Because the galaxy had learned the hard way. Humans don't ask for mercy. They teach its value. And when humanity decides the lesson is necessary, the universe takes notes, scars deeply, and never forgets. Somewhere in the Sol system, a retired Marine poured tea into a chipped mug, watched the sun rise over the horizon, and muttered, half to himself and half to the stars, "Freedom's expensive. And some folks really don't learn until it costs them everything." The galaxy had learned. And humanity quietly smiled.